What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Michael here and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Today we have a brand new Fallout 4 build to share with you guys, and she is the ultimate wasteland tycoon. This is the Chemist. The only thing more powerful than the Chemist's intelligence is her love for the many chems found in the Commonwealth. What begins as a coping mechanism turns into her claim for fame and endless wealth. She will use her intellect to craft every chem under the sun, and will use an elaborate system of settlements to distribute and profit from her goods, fueling the weaknesses of every sorry soul in Boston. The Chemist is a socialite, making connections everywhere she goes, but when she is brewing chems or brutally butchering her many enemies, she dons her surgical mask, killing and crafting with equal skill. Naturally, she isn't the strongest fighter in the Commonwealth, but her extensive knowledge of chems and her immunity to their addiction will make her unstoppable against any obstacle. While not as evil as our last build, this one looks spooky enough to fit the month of Halloween. She's also pretty cutthroat from a business perspective. Now, before we get into the build, don't forget that timestamps can be found in the description below to help you find your way around the video. But with that said, let's get things going with the Chemist's backstory and basic values. The Chemist was born in Boston. Her mum had moved from China as a child and adopted the English language and American culture long before meeting her American father. The Chemist was the second child and first daughter. Her older brother excelled in sport, while she was more interested in her studies, taking a strong interest in law from a young age. She was quite peculiar for a young child. She also had a knack for conversation, and she wasn't the kind of child to stay quiet for long. This transitioned into her teens when she became obsessed with debating, earning an immaculate record, so much so that she became unchallenged by any of her peers. On top of everything, her social personality made her quite popular in high school and in college, where she attended the Suffolk County School of Law. Her intelligence projected her a long way, but it wasn't enough to guarantee a smooth ride through tertiary education. This was because she often procrastinated. In fact, she quickly found herself falling behind, getting bogged down by the stresses of deadlines and lengthy essays. She knew what to write and had all the knowledge in her head, she just couldn't focus. There had to be a way to help her concentrate on her assignments, and at the end of her first semester, she turned to one of her friends for help. This particular friend was named Alice, and she always received good grades and handed in her work on time, despite not being incredibly smart, at least not as smart as the Chemist. After speaking to Alice, the Chemist found out her secret: mentats. These supposedly increased her memory and mental processes. The chalky red pills then became the Chemist's salvation. With a deadline coming up, she took 2 pills at 7 p.m. the night before, and after 10 minutes, the stress was purged from her mind. She was doubtless and focused, and she wrote. It was so easy. She knew all the content after all. In the early hours of the morning, she completed her work and slept soundly. The one guarantee, and the main consolation of the end of semester, was the parties. Everyone unanimously shrugged off the weight of their work for a few weeks and drank themselves stupid. The Chemist loved socializing at these parties, and she even shared the story of her productivity to a close circle of friends. Their response surprised her. They were totally casual, as if popping mentats like breath mints was a given when there were deadlines to be met. It just so happened that these friends at the party carried mentats of their own, only they were different in color and consistency. Her friends assured her these were the best kind, affecting more than just mental clarity, but even removing inhibitions and shooting up creativity. The deep sleeps that followed were a big bonus too. The Chemist couldn't resist. She had to try them, and as promised, they were incredible. As she came down from the high, she could only think of the next time she'd feel that clear of mind again. She didn't want to feel the weight of her stress bearing down on her shoulders anymore, not now that there was a tangible solution. And so the Chemist developed a habit. It developed slowly, deceiving her into thinking she could manage it. She took mentats when she was feeling low and in need of a creative spark or a euphoric buzz, and then when that wasn't enough and she wanted to feel numb, she faked a sickness and got a prescription for Med-X. She was then immune to the negative effects of law school, and she got on very well with her friends who continued to follow a similar path. She completed her degree with high distinctions, but when the student life came to an end, she didn't know where to turn. She had made it through school, but she'd picked up a habit for substance abuse along the way, and she could feel herself descending into a weakness. It was comfortable. When meaningful thoughts of her career and her future came into her mind, she wanted to bury them under the familiar comfort of chems. She was convinced that she would not be able to resist the temptation until she met Nate. She walked the streets of Boston one overcast Sunday afternoon, and the local Veterans Hall was having an event. Standing at the entrance was the man she would spend the rest of her pre-war life with. His name was Nate, and he found the Chemist particularly attractive. He decided to approach her on the streets, a risky move, but Nate was a charismatic character himself, and she actually agreed to go on a date with him. This escalated into a long-term relationship, and eventually when he found out about her substance abuse, things were rocky for a while, but Nate was a determined man. He rescued her from the pits of drug addiction. With his support, she got cleaned up, and together they bought a house to raise a family. Maybe someday when her baby grew up, she could find work as a lawyer. Everything seemed to have fallen into place for the chemist until October 23rd, 2077, when they were evacuated to Vault 111, narrowly avoiding the radioactive blast of nuclear Armageddon. Now for quest choices, and be warned, there are main game spoilers. So with her husband murdered, her son kidnapped, and the world around her gone to ruin, the chemist's first reaction is immense and overwhelming distress. Even at her worst, she had never been alone like this. The only way she would be able to cope would be to find some chems to numb her. Just one hit of Med-X would help her process the loss. Inevitably, this would lead her to get hooked, and her dependence on chems will be back in full force. However, she maintains enough control to realize that she doesn't just want to wither away in some ditch. The post-war Commonwealth is full of suffering survivors and settlers like her, and chems were abundant in the apocalypse, with so many supplies and so many people willing to use them. She decides she needs a way to gather resources and find her son. She needs caps and she needs information, and she needs to cope. She will use her intelligence to brew chems and her social personality to develop connections, selling her commodities to all those who need them and using them for herself when it helps. Eventually, she'll use them so much that she actually becomes immune to the withdrawal effects. She'll use her charisma to build tight networks for distribution, building settlements across Boston to act as the operating bases for her laboratories. She'll even use her gift of the gab to have settlers help gather resources. These crafted chems can be sold to shop owners in the settlements, and you will roleplay that they are then distributed throughout the Commonwealth. You can sell them to shopkeepers in Diamond City and Goodneighbor, roleplaying that they will be passing them off to customers. This way, you're like the original supplier, the one behind it all. On the way to finding her son, she will build an empire slowly, but don't expect her to play nice. She doesn't exactly feel too good about the death of her family, and she will use the chems plenty herself. In fact, the chemist becomes a bit of a tyrannical businesswoman. She won't be evil by any means to begin with, but she's certainly a cutthroat corporate. She believes she needs to be to grow her prosperity and find her son. She's well aware she can actually make a successful life in this new world, but she won't necessarily find happiness. Originally, the chemist will side with the railroad, as they are very useful in helping to find her son, although she's not really committed to their cause. This will also conveniently give her access to the super handy ballistic weave armor mod. Ultimately, however, she will abandon them for the Institute, prioritizing her love for her son over the liberation of synths. She will see the advanced capabilities of the Institute as the best possible hope for the future of humanity in the aftermath of the Great War, and obviously, because of her emotions and feelings towards her son, she will be a bit biased in that regard. As I mentioned before, the chemist will establish some settlements to act as her manufacturing headquarters and her distribution, but you'll want to leave some settlements untouched. You see, the reason you do this is so that you can raid them later on with the raiders of Nuka World. You won't be bloodthirsty, but you know it's a good way to gain power and to make any potential Chem Lord rivals feel intimidated. Again, you're not going to be a psycho like the Disciples gang. You want caps, not blood. When you do reach Nuka World, side with the pack and the operators. Obviously, choosing to help the raiders, the chemist will have become a darker individual. The loss of her son is a major catalyst for this, so make sure you do the main story before you do Nuka World. With this combination of settlements and raider camps, she will have legit safe houses and chem labs to operate her business, but also raider organizations who will act as her muscle, serving as an armed force against external threats rather than simply having resource gatherers. By the end of the game, the chemist's business will be untouchable, and everyone across the Commonwealth will use her products to fuel their chem addictions. Overall, the chemist is driven by business and personal gain. She can be seen cold by many because she will do whatever it takes to ensure her own survival and the prosperity of the things she cares about. Do remember though that many people don't know she's behind the chems, and she will not wear the surgical mask in social areas, opting to act more charming instead. And with the chemist's backstory, factions and role-playing sorted, let's look at the statistical side of things. The chemist's start game special stats will be 1 strength, 1 perception, 4 endurance, 10 charisma, 10 intelligence, 1 agility, and 1 luck. The special book in Sean's room will go into agility to open the door to the commando perk as early as possible. As you can see, the focus of this build is not dedicated to combat stats like strength and agility. The chemist is first and foremost a businesswoman and will let her influence over others keep her out of harm's way in the wasteland. Charisma is one stat that makes this possible, and the chemist will start the game with 10 points in it. This stat will be critical for the efficient operation of her chem business, but it will also allow her to have the most influence over the animals, creatures, and people around her. If she finds herself in danger, there will always be another living thing willing to risk risk its life to save her. Yes, she's just that persuasive. You'll also use it to pass all the speech checks in the game. The second major stat is intelligence, and this one focuses on the manufacturing side of things. She uses this stat and her knowledge of chems and their production process to keep her stores full and business booming. There will be small investments among the other stats, and we can talk more about those now with the Chemist's essential perks. First up, we have the strength stat line. The Chemist doesn't claim to be physically powerful. Why would she bother when she has droves of people lining up to do her bidding? But despite this, the harshness of the wasteland will toughen her up a bit, and that means dropping 1 perk point into the base stat of strength. Once you have that extra point as well as the strength bobblehead, we can take the armorer perk. Grab all ranks of that to gain all ranks of armor modifications. This is important as it will allow you to use ballistic weave on your apparel. Next, we have endurance. 4 points in this stat will give you some useful health benefits, but the most significant part of this, which can be utilized before even getting the bobblehead, is the availability of the chem resistant perk. With both ranks of this perk, you will gain complete immunity to chem addiction. After all these years of use, chems will practically be breath mints to you now. You will be able to use all of the stat enhancing chems under the sun in and out of fights now without fear of withdrawal effects and addictions. Charisma is next, and from this stat we have a big list of hugely effective perks to take. First, be sure to grab Cap Collector. This will significantly improve buying and selling prices at vendors. The last rank will also permit you to invest 500 caps in merchants to permanently raise their buying capacity. Additionally, this perk helps to allow specific stores to be built at your settlements. Then there's Animal Friend. 2 ranks of this will allow you to pacify animals and even to incite them to attack on your behalf. In a similar vein, you should invest 2 points into Wasteland Whisperer and Intimidation. These work exactly the same way as Animal Friend, but Wasteland Whisperer allows you to pacify and incite creatures, and Intimidation to pacify and incite humans. Local Leader is next, and this one is essential to running your business. This will allow you to set up supply lines between settlements and to build stores and workstations at workshop settlements. Lastly, from the Charisma stat line comes Inspirational. This allows your companions to carry more items, boosts their damage output and resistance, and prevents you and your companion from being able to damage one another. Remember that our strength isn't super duper high, so we like to make our companions carry plenty of the loot. Intelligence is our next stat, and the first thing to take from here is Medic. With all ranks of this perk, Stimpaks will restore all of your lost health, while Radaway will remove all present radiation. Combat isn't her strong suit, so this perk will be very useful when dealing with the perils of the wasteland. Next up, we have the crafting combo of Gun Nut and Science. With these 2 perks, you'll have access to all the weapon and high-tech mods that you'll need. Take 3 ranks of Gun Nut and 2 ranks of Science. These obviously help for certain settlement building requirements. Then we have Scrapper, and this is a settlement builder's best friend. When you scrap your looted weapons and armor, the first 2 ranks of this perk will allow you to acquire uncommon and even rare crafting components in the process. Components like circuitry, nuclear material, and fiber optics can be a bit of a pain to find, but with Scrapper it's considerably easier. Favorited components can also be highlighted to help you find them. Then the 3rd rank will allow you to salvage more in general when scrapping items. And lastly, from the intelligence stat line, there is the big one. This perk is the Chemist's absolute necessity, and it's called Chemist. Once you have all 4 ranks of this perk, chems you use will last a whopping 200% longer. And as you'll soon see in the gear section, there are a bunch of great chems to use in and out of combat for ridiculously good effects. Agility's not too important for the Chemist. When she's in combat, sneaking around and going for criticals is not really her style. The Chemist will be making her presence known, bending the will of some enemies and blowing the rest to smithereens. With her extremely deadly, explosive submachine gun, she also has companions to fight for her. From agility, max out commando. That's all you need to be effective in combat. With this, your automatic weapons are twice as powerful, your hipfire accuracy is improved, and you have a good chance of staggering your foes. Finally, we have luck. The Chemist isn't particularly lucky. Rather, she is just so damn business savvy and intelligent that she creates her own luck. We only invest a little bit here as there are some useful perks to get your hands on. First, be sure to put 1 perk point into the base stat. Then get Scrounger. This will allow you to find much more ammo when scavenging, and with the final ranks, there's a chance to refill your magazine completely when firing the last round of your weapon. Be sure to get rich by selling the ammo you find but don't use. And then once you have the bobblehead, you can get 2 ranks of Bloody Mess. This will make the visuals of killing with your highly explosive submachine gun infinitely better, but it will also give you a nice 10% bonus to all damage in combat. Once you level up past what we've shown, you can get all ranks of this perk. At the end of the game, with all of the bobbleheads collected and none of her gear included, the Chemist's special stats will be 3 strength, 2 perception, 5 endurance, 11 charisma, 11 intelligence, 3 agility, and 3 luck. Now let's quickly look over the Chemist's gear. She'll wear a laundered green dress, making her very presentable in social or business related scenarios, but thanks to her time with the railroad, it will also be sufficiently sufficiently protective in combat once improved with ballistic weave. Outside of combat, she won't wear anything over her face, but in combat and when making chems, use the surgical mask for that aesthetic. It's kind of spooky and fits the cutthroat vibe of the build. As for weapons, the Chemist will be using one of the most powerful weapons in the game. This gun is so effective that it can turn non-combat oriented builds into absolute killing machines. This is the Spray and Pray unique submachine gun variant. We'll want this fully upgraded with a muzzle brake in place of the suppressor, as stealth's not the focus. For those unaware, the Spray and Pray fires like an automatic submachine gun, but the rounds are explosive and dish out high power area of effect damage. You can also carry a fully upgraded 10mm automatic pistol to use as a backup weapon. Even though it's a pistol, because you make it automatic, it will still run off the commando perks. It also runs off different ammo too, so you can be diversified in case you run out. Lastly, you'll need to stock up on those chems. Plenty of time will be spent brewing chems, and most of those will be turned into caps, thanks to your elaborate network of stores and distributors. But be sure to keep some for yourself. Mentats and Med-X will fit the role-playing and both have their uses. Mentats will be great out of combat, as you can take it to have higher intelligence before turning in quests, thus leveling faster. Med-X will help you when you think you're going to be taking a lot of enemy fire. Offensively, prioritize using Psycho Jet. This custom crafted combination of Psycho and Jet is brilliant for slowing time down and shooting up your damage output, damage resistance, and action points. Don't limit yourself to just these though. You can get creative and make all the hybrid chems you want. All of these will have some use in your playthrough. As for companion choices, any of the mercenary types are perfect. McCready is a good choice for the backup in combat and even for the romance option if you're interested. Gage also works well as a second-hand man once you've got the raiders on your side. You'll want to have lots of settlements, as I mentioned earlier. These can be turned into your personal chem labs, but make sure you leave some free for when you side with the Nuka World Raiders. Subscribe to FudgeMuppet if you're new to the channel, and show us your support with a like if you enjoyed this build. This has been our latest brand new Fallout 4 build, the Chemist. Don't forget, timestamps can be found in the description below to help you find your way around the video, and down there you'll also find links to our social media accounts and even our new Twitch channel. Come and stop by this Monday morning evening to catch us playing Fallout New Vegas, and we'll be sure to chat with you. We'd love to see you there, and as always, thanks so much for watching, guys. My name's Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.